Charles, a lot of African NuFriends are returning to the church and religion of late, also with the new presentation being predominantly internet-based. Is this good for every part of the world? Duane responds, again, people are being funny. With the church idea, people have nothing else to do because they're bored. So they go to church because they feel insecure, probably. That's my guess. Again, everything is revealed. Are the birds or the animals going to church? Look at the bigger picture. People look at their little personal life. That's all they do mainly, and they judge it off of that. I've used the example of the sun shining. Learn to recognize what the sun is representing. It's more than everything. But again, it all comes back to this personal self. Everything equals itself. So people do the same thing, and actually they shrink within their personal life. They start shrinking even more, and they expect something to happen to decide differently for them. They keep deciding this. You have to decide to constantly step into the unknown, you might say, and see what's there. Otherwise you won't, and you're just going to see your personal life. It's not that I'm concerned or not concerned about what people do. It's none of my business, really, what other people do. All I can do is present it, and on the earth things are mechanical. The internet, what we do and present out there, that's part of it, but the real picture is to see and recognize. It's about recognition now. It's not so much about mental ideas such as buildings, doctrines, what people say, ideas, chats and rumours, etc. These are things that occur accordingly, but to see the bigger picture, it's unseen, and who can see that and relate to it and do something accordingly? We're also not here to prove anything to Ekankar. Ekankar is a planned demise, that's it. So anybody that takes over something and starts to ruin and make it worse, well, that's a planned demise. I have nothing to prove to them, because like the sun shining, it shines upon everything, and what's there to prove? All life is already demonstrated. You have to figure it out now. So it's more than just the literal. What Paul presented, he was the babysitter. He provided the disciplines. Paul talked about problems and the law of karma, the law of this and the law of that, because that was the boot camp disciplines. Now we're into a real position to where you don't need that. You don't need authorities. You don't need any of these restrictions, but people keep going back to their restrictions. You're there to provide an understanding, or are you just going to baby them? As you baby them, they're going to stay babies, and that's it, and that's the only understanding they're going to have. A person grows up to a certain age, let's say 18, and it's a time to get out of the house, get a job and pay your own rent. Or do you keep babying them till they're 20, 30, 40, keep supporting them till they get worse and worse, and they can't figure out any purpose that they have here? For the most part, why did you come here? Ask these people, why did they come here? To do the same thing they've done for lifetimes? Do they have a purpose? A real purpose is to stand real with the all is, and that's everything, but you have to see it. You must learn to recognize it and see it, and this is a toughie, because again, people are very emotionally and mentally attached to their personal life, so they're afraid to see it. And yes, the world is bad, and it's going to get a lot worse because of what's taking place, because they see us on the real side with what's taking place, etc. You either face it or you run from it, and you will more so be the effect of it. I've seen people who have passed over to the real side, and they're still lost. There's no miracle that happens just because you leave this place, or the idea of how you want to leave and go to the 7th level, or go to a happier place. Well, good luck. You are here to face this, and all that is taking place here is to help you recognize what's real. What you're simply dealing with is people that have agreed to distortion, and that's it. Again, compare it simply to the sun shining. All that you've considered, all that you've heard, all the ideas that people have. All you have to do is consider it and compare it to the sun shining. Does it make sense? No, it doesn't. You can make sense of it. That's your part with the Africans, to recognize it. I'm doing that too with everybody. So when things occur, what I do is I write something or say something like this. But that recognition is up to each person, and if they don't get it, they don't get it. That's it. They're still in their la-la land, and basically they have nothing except the ideas floating around their head, because the whole of life is very real, more real than the sun shining, but the sun gives us just as an example for something for people to relate to. But again, that's kind of like a fantasy. It really is. But life is so real, It's more than anything you can fantasize, and it's way more than anything you can consider here that's solid. It's a real risk-taker position to recognize what's going on. By the very fact of what I've said and refer to, and the real side experiences that those who are paying attention have, there is something else, isn't there? Why would these people do all these funny things? Go to church to get tap-lined? Because they have nothing else to do. I'd rather walk along the beach. These Africans usually have very nice places, the ocean or the jungle, etc. Something else they can do creatively rather than all those old things. I don't do that stuff, like go to church. It's nonsense. I don't want to really be around those people. It's not that they're bad, that's not the idea. It's not about bad or good. It's about, is there something else to do? The whole world is dying, so I'm doing everything I can realistically, here and on the real side, to bring something else forward. But you have to learn to see it. People are still in their same old personal, primitive mode, and you can't just keep babying them. And I don't mean tell them what to do, but you must creatively explain their situation and compare it to that, etc. You have to do this comparison thing. I compare what I'm doing as one example of many with what Paul presented, and that was fine for that time, but now it doesn't work. You can read Paul's books and think how wonderful they are. Well then, you're in your own la-la land. Emotional attachment, and that isn't what life is now. You have to recognize what it is now. In those times, you drove a 1970s car. Well, all of a sudden, the 2020 models are coming out. It's a new day. Life isn't what it was. It is what it is now, and it's to be recognized, or you don't. And it's not according to this world. This world equals a reference. That's all it equals. And yes, you have to figure it out. It isn't good here, and it's getting worse. And you must figure that out too. Face it, or you don't. You go hide from it and pretend it's not happening. Then you still have to deal with it, and it gets worse, because now you haven't become more aware to recognize how to face it. This is just how it is. We've all been a part of this creation, and now we have to face it, and it can be okay. But you must learn to be real. Learn to recognize what the sun is representing. Use that as your first reference. You can create your own references, but that's a good one, and eventually you will start to see what's going on. It's very subtle. I wrote a group. We are not therapists, and there's no problem solving here. It's not about solving problems. It's about becoming more aware so you can at least handle it. And in the physical, it's not perfect. Actually, it's so distorted with everything that's going on. Like trying to keep up with the weather. Well, it's all manipulated and distorted, and things are happening. We have to deal with it. Until you have the awareness to where you can surpass it. So that's the whole idea. It's learning to be self-sufficient within your real awareness, more so than just your mind. So you can take vitamins and minerals, anti-aging pills, etc., but that's not it. It's about your real awareness, to recognize that, and that's a toughie, because you don't always have time, but you must learn to give yourself time, to take the time, or all you're going to end up with is what you've decided personally here. You have a big challenge to figure this out and to relay this, but if you keep playing patty cake with them, then it's all going to stay the same, and it gets worse. It only gets worse. I've seen it so many times, and trying to relay this. But once you can learn to see through all of this, relay it accordingly, and do the best you can here, on the real side, it shows up. That's the best part. That's your real awareness.